Hello everyone, my name is Olivia, and today we're going to start a new series on my channel, which someone on Twitter kindly named Books and Brews because I could not think of a title for myself. So this is a new series where I'm going to be drinking a cup of coffee while I tell you about some of my recent reads that I would highly recommend to you all, because I wanted to retire my recent reads series because I did not really enjoy the structure of it, and it was a pretty exhaustive series to film because I was telling you about every single book that I read, and most of the time I do not enjoy the books that I read, so I don't want to waste time telling you about books that I feel pretty lukewarm about. I would much rather create a series where I will talk to you whenever I have 5 books to recommend. So these are 5 adult fiction books that I recently read towards the end of 2020 that I greatly enjoyed and would highly recommend to you all. And these books are a collection of different genres as well, so I feel like there will be something for everyone in this episode. So sit back, relax, and grab a cup of coffee, and let's talk about the books that I would highly recommend that you read because they are all so amazing. And we do have a sponsor for this first episode of Books and Brews, and it is once again Skillshare. Thank you so much to Skillshare for sponsoring this video, for supporting my channel, and let's hear more about them right now. If one of your New Year's resolutions is to try new things and develop some skills, then you will love Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community offering classes on so many topics to help you explore your creativity. Some of my personal favorite classes focus on editing videos, lifestyle topics, writing, and plant care. If you are hoping to develop your writing skills this year, Skillshare offers exclusive classes with best-selling authors offering their insight into their craft. There are classes with Kirsten White, Daniel Jose Older, Roxane Gay, and so many more. Skillshare is full of inspiring people ready to tell you about their craft and offers you a community to grow and develop your skills with others through discussion boards and student projects. If you are interested in trying out Skillshare this year, the first 1,000 of you to click the link in my description will get a free trial of Skillshare Premium membership. New courses are always being added to their site, so if you want to continue that membership after your free trial, it will be less than $10 a month. Thank you to Skillshare for sponsoring this video, and now back to Olivia. So the first book that I want to talk about is Moon of the Crusted Snow by Wabgishig Rice. This is a very short science fiction novel written by an indigenous author, and it follows the Anishinaabe community during a winter where there is a massive power outage. They don't have communication to the outside world, they don't have communication with people who provide them with supplies, and they are basically stranded during one of the harshest seasons that they have to live through. So the tensions are already rising because they don't have power, they have limited supplies, and a lot of people in the community aren't adhering to the rules that are created to help during this power outage. And while all that is happening, a mysterious man from the outside world comes into this First Nation community seeking solace. So they decide to take him in because he's just one person, he won't be that much trouble, let's let him in for the winter, everyone can need the help. So they let him in, and once they do that, the foundations of their society falls apart and their world kind of crumbles. So this is a really cool post-apocalyptic novel that I sped through. I read it super quickly and I really enjoyed it. I am not the biggest fan of sci-fi. I don't find myself called to it as often, but when it deals with post-apocalyptic matters in a very quiet way where it only seems to affect one community, I find it to be fascinating because I really enjoy the way that authors can dissect what creates a society and how easily it can crumble when the foundations of it are slowly disintegrating. And in my Goodreads review, I said that this book felt like an A24 film in novel form because it is such a quiet and an ambiguous type of novel. The tension is very subtle and very below the surface, but then it explodes. And I think the way that it is written, the setting, the characters, I feel like it would make the perfect A24 film. I think it would be really good because it's set in a very small community, and A24 novels seem to only really follow a small amount of characters, and I think that this would be a perfect A24 film. It is full of intrigue and mystery, and it's also just really harrowing because it's a very real thing that can happen, like a blackout that affects an entire community. I think that's what makes it so intriguing, and I just think it would be a really, really good movie, especially an A24 movie, just because of the landscape and all that. I think it was just so well done and so intriguing, and it was just like the right amount of sci-fi for me to enjoy, and I thought it was such a good post-apocalyptic novel, and it doesn't have to deal with a pandemic, so you're good to go if you want to read a post-apocalyptic novel that does not deal with current situations. The next novel that I have to recommend is an adult contemporary that I greatly enjoyed and listened to an audiobook, and I would highly recommend you listen to an audiobook as well. And it is Transcendent Kingdom by Ya Jiasi. This follows a woman named Gifty, and she is studying neuroscience in Stanford, and she is basically studying depression and addiction and how we can prevent those things from happening. She was influenced to follow this career path due to the untimely death of her brother Nana, who died from a heroin overdose. We follow Gifty as she is a student in Stanford, but we also get to have flashbacks to her childhood where she was growing up alongside her brother, and she was also growing up alongside her mother, who is a very religious person. So not only does this novel talk about depression, addiction, and grieving a loved one, but it also greatly touches upon religion and how the structure of religion and the church can influence both positively and negatively a person as they grow up and grow older. I thought this book was phenomenal in handling grief and really describing how it can stick with you for years upon years and greatly influence your life, as well as the way that it touched upon religion and the way that Gifty felt towards religion. I normally stray from novels that greatly explore religion because I just don't want to read about that. That's not something that greatly interests me. But I decided to pick this up because Ya Jiasi is just a wonderful author. I greatly enjoyed her first novel, Homecoming, and I thought that this novel touched upon religion in a very interesting way, in a way that I related to greatly because it was very similar to the way that I grew up with religion. It's not a very preachy book in terms of religion. It explores it in a very unique way that I would only recommend you find out about if you read the novel. I don't want to give too much away about this novel, but I think it was just so well done in terms of exploring family, exploring grief, exploring addiction, exploring religion, and I think it encompasses all that so well into this one character, Gifty, and how her family influenced her growth as a person, and how she is still growing as a person, as an adult, and how she's trying to reconnect with her mother years later. If you are a fan of Homecoming, if you are a fan of contemporary adult fiction novels, I think this one is amazing. So if that is something that speaks to you, I would highly recommend Transcendent Kingdom because I think it was really well written, and I feel like Ya Jiasi is only getting better and better as she grows as a writer. So the next book that I want to talk about is The Brass Rock by Evie Wilde, and I read this on audiobook as well, so it has 3 narrators, which I really enjoyed. I forgot to light that candle. I think it would make it so much cozier. Give me a moment. Cute! Can you really see it though? The Brass Rock follows 3 different women throughout the course of history and how their stories greatly influence one another. So in the 1700s in Scotland, we follow a woman who is accused of being a witch. And in the second perspective, we follow a woman who marries a widower after World War II. And then 50 years later, we follow a woman who lives in modern day UK and how she is navigating that world. The Brass Rock is a book I also read on audiobook, and I thought it was just so well composed because we have these really 3 distinct voices of 3 different women throughout the course of history, and how violence against women is something that is so continuous and something that you see in every single generation, and you see it in very different ways that are both subtle and very obvious. It really highlights the mistreatment that women have to deal with on a daily basis from both their loved ones and complete strangers that I found to be heartbreakingly relatable. I think if you're looking for a very big character study of 3 different women and how their lives influence one another throughout the courses of history and how they all have to deal with the same types of circumstances, I think this is the book for you. I think if you're looking for a darker historical fiction with a feminist overtone, I would highly recommend The Brass Rock, and it is a novel that I wish I read physically along with the audiobook because I would have really loved to highlight the pages and really analyze the text because I think it was Really well done, really relatable, but also in a very heartbreaking way. The last two novels are featured in my favorite books of 2020 video, so if you have not seen that yet, I would highly recommend that you do, so you could see all my favorite books that I read in 2020. And my favorite book of 2020 that I'm going to feature here as well is Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell. This is such a good book. That's it. That's the review. We're done. I'm going to read you the blurb that they put on Goodreads that I think would help really encompass the book in a different way that I did in my favorite books of 2020 video. This book is about the death of Shakespeare's 11-year-old son Hamnet, a name interchangeable with Hamlet in 15th century Britain, and the years leading up to the production of his great play. So I picked up this novel on a whim because I kept on looking at the title on Instagram and people kept posting about it, and I'm like, Hamlet, does this have to do with Shakespeare? And it does. It is a historical fiction following Shakespeare and his family and how Shakespeare grew up to be the playwright that he is today. It follows him in his youth when he first meets his wife, Anne Hathaway, who is called Agnes in this novel. And it follows him as his family grows, as they grow older, and as they eventually lose their son, Hamnet. What I really enjoy about this novel is that it doesn't really focus on Shakespeare, but instead focuses on his wife, Agnes. Because we get to follow her when she first meets William Shakespeare, when they marry, when they have children, and when she loses her child. And I think it does a great job at shedding light on a very famous woman in history who married one of the most famous men in history, and yet we don't know anything about her. Anne Hathaway is a pretty big mystery to us all, so Maggie O'Farrell takes the liberty to kind of fictionalize her life and explore what it would be like to lose a son at such a young age while also being married to a man who is very famous and very busy because he's always focused on his plays. It's very rare for me to find a book that I just want to completely tear through and read in one sitting, and I read this in 2 sittings sadly because I had to sleep. Hamnet completely enamored me because I am a big fan of Shakespeare and I think it's interesting to learn more about his life, and I really enjoyed the exploration of Agnes's life, and I thought it was just so well done in writing a family and talking about grief and creating this atmosphere for this piece of history that we don't really know a lot about. It's a book that took me completely by surprise. It wasn't really on my radar for most of 2020. I picked it up on a whim and it left such a big impact on me, and it's definitely one of my favorite books of all time now. And then we have an adult fiction that is more in the genre of thrillers, and this is Leave the World Behind by Rumaan Alam, and this is also a book that I read on audiobook. You guessed it. Leave the World Behind follows a family that is vacationing in Long Island. They rented out a house when one night the doorbell rings, and Amanda and Clay, the people who are renting the house, open the door and they find Ruth and GH, who are the owners of the house. They are a black couple and Amanda and Clay are a white couple with their 2 children. So immediately Amanda and Clay are suspicious. They don't really believe that Ruth and GH are the owners of the house, and they don't believe that Ruth and GH are telling them that there was a massive blackout in Manhattan and they had to come back to Long Island to find safety. Because Amanda and Clay just assumed that the power outage that happened in their house that they're renting was just a freak accident. They didn't think that there was anything bigger happening. So reluctantly, Amanda and Clay allow Ruth and GH into the home that they own, and these 2 families now have to work together during a very weird situation where the power is out, they cannot communicate with others, their cell phones don't work, TVs don't work, and it seems like they are cut off from the rest of the world. I loved this book because it was so ambiguous and it was a kind of speculative fiction where this really weird situation happens, similar to Moon of the Crusted Snow. Apparently, I love blackout stories. I just love seeing people with very different personalities come together to try and survive this one situation. I think it's such a great way to explore personalities, and this one greatly explores internalized prejudices. I think that Moon of the Crusted Snow will leave you a little bit more satisfied compared to Leave the World Behind, because Leave the World Behind is a type of novel that will raise a ton of questions but leave you with very little answers. And if it's done right, and if the intrigue is there, and if it thrills me, I don't mind that. I like novels that present an issue but doesn't give you all the answers, because When have you ever gotten all the answers in life? In life, there are certain situations where you're not going to get all the answers, and I feel like that greatly reflects in Leave the World Behind. So not a lot of people may like this because it is so ambiguous, but I really enjoyed it. It felt like a radio drama in my head. I just thought it was really fun, and I'm a big fan of like speculative, post-apocalyptic, blackout type of stories. So if you have recommendations for that, please let me know. I would love to pick up more books like these. It doesn't have to be blackouts, by the way. It could just be like a speculative, post-apocalyptic literary fiction. That's what I'm looking for. So I hope you enjoyed getting these 5 recommendations from me. If you're looking for adult fiction, now you have 5 more books to add to your TBR. And I just really enjoyed all these novels, and I thought they were all so great in very different ways, and they touched upon different topics in different ways. And I just loved the different genres that I picked up. I thought they were also compelling and left me on the edge of my seat in different ways. I hope you enjoy this new series of Books and Brews, where I will occasionally recommend you a handful of books while I drink a cup of coffee. I want it to be like a very cozy type of atmospheric type of series. I feel like this is a much more enjoyable type of video that I can film, and I hope it's a much more enjoyable type of series that you can watch. So let me know what you think of this series. Let me know what you think of the name. Thank you so much, Joe, for naming this, because I was racking my brain trying to think of a title and I just could not think of one. And then she came along and recommended me Books and Brews, and I thought it was really cute. And if you've made it this far, comment down below a leaf emoji to match my fiddle leaf fig, Humphrey Bogart. Then we can know who stays until the end of my videos. And if you do, I love you all so much. Thank you for your support and your kindness and your kind comments, and I will see you in another video. Bye!